Erasmus Menicum says that trauma decontextualized in a family system looks like family traits, and trauma decontextualized in a people's looks like culture. And so trauma is adaptation, and these adaptations can look like family traits, can look like culture. Pause for a breath and to rock my body. And so areas of commonalities that we all struggle with, work through, the PTSD or survival orientation and survival adaptations, codependence, and I call it imposter syndrome because it's a survival adaptation. We had to be someone else in the world in order to hide the dysfunction that was going on in the family system. Workaholism, addictions, toxic shame, voicelessness, rage, as well as abandonment issues. We may also grapple with traumatic homesickness, the sense of psychological homelessness. I don't know who I am or where I come from or who my people are. I feel like I'm living betwixt and between all worlds, and I automatically place myself at the edges of all groups or at the very center and above, and yet not feeling like I'm a part of something bigger than myself, which can also then cause me to become a part of, I won't say cults, but I can become a part of larger organizations with that hope of feeling like I'm a part of something bigger than myself. There can be traumatic homesickness and traumatic grief, meaning the whiff of the sniff of anything related to home, the word home, have you been home? It can flip us into a trauma response. And the whiff of the sniff of grief can also flip us into a trauma response. And there can also be complex, complicated, collected and collective and ambiguous related to issues around home and belonging, culture and identity. I'm going to pause and take a big deep breath with you all. Even though I am centering refugees and immigrants, those who have sought refuge, this landscape, I feel, applies to all of my clients, irrespective of the body that they're in. And it also is a part of a larger socio-cultural landscape. And so within this, we have the dynamics of trauma being historical, institutional, present, pervasive, systemic, intergenerational, interpersonal, and internalized. And as Resmaa Menakem says, resource is primary. Trauma is that which disconnects us from resource with a capital R, mystery with a capital M, ancestors with a capital A, elemental energy with capital E's. And so when we come to the definitions around who seeks refuge, there is the official definition about those who feel fear of being persecuted for legitimate reasons and their home country cannot give them protection. And mid-2020, this isn't 2024 or 2025, mid-2020, over 80 million individuals forcibly displaced worldwide. And 40 to 50% of those who seek refuge are children. This does not include those who are internally displaced, and this does not include the population of displacement that has increased since 2020. About 12 years ago, I got exposed to the work of Harold Napoleon, who was an Alaska Native elder, who was one of the first of his generation to have experienced the benefit of a Western education. And he is from the wild west coast of Alaska. And despite representing his people at the tribal, at the state, and at the federal levels of governance, he could not shake his addictive relationship to alcohol, and in a blackout drunk killed his young son. And that resulted in a very long prison sentence at Fairbanks Correctional Centre. And while he was there, he wrote an incredible book called Yuyohak, the way of the human, the way of spirit. And in that book, he talks about the impact of colonialism upon his people that then gives rise to the phenomenon that we see today that is also common amongst Indigenous peoples. And yet, I want to draw us towards one thing that he said that landed for me really hard. He said, there are Alaska Native women and children fleeing certain villages like refugees. And in that moment, the definition of who seeks refuge lateralized into anyone who has experienced forced homelessness, anyone whose current safety issues leads them to fear for their future. And as a result, they embark into the unknown, seeking refuge.